She's just less possessive now, and this can save a dog's life.
Can this technique employed by Dog Daddy be justified as something that can actually save a dog's life? The technique in question involves pinching a dog on the bottom of the flank towards the rear leg.
Alright guys, I wanted to do this video to address some of the concerns with the technique that I used in my last video to teach this dog to go from obsessed and possessive over the ball with dropping it this easily, as you guys will see right here in this video. At the end of the video, you're going to see how she was before. But I trained her to drop the ball and not be so possessive over it in one training session.
The stated purpose is to teach the dog to drop the ball and to decrease possessiveness within a single lesson. We will only show the actual technique for a few seconds, and while we do recommend that you watch it, if you would like to form an informed, independent opinion, you can skip ahead if you find all of this too distressing. If needed, skip ahead now.
See how she does not want to let go of the ball. She holds on to it. And I'm going to apply pressure here. And this is going to make her let go. Now watch how she's going to learn. Now we have to use this to make her let go every time, right? So she's going to go for the ball again. Every time she grabs it, I'm going to go back there. And now it's going to be easier. And then she drops it.
The dog is clearly yelping, and that is not just surprise, it is clearly pain, as Dog Daddy increases the pressure until the yelp occurs. So this technique is clearly an aversive method. The use of aversive techniques and tools could potentially be justified when one or more of the following factors are present. 1. The dog's behavior is dangerous to a person, particularly vulnerable people such as children and the elderly. 2. The dog's behavior is dangerous to another animal, whether this is another dog, other pets, livestock, or protected wildlife. 3. The dog's behavior poses a danger to itself. When evaluating the need for a particular aversive tool or method, one must consider firstly the immediacy of the risk posed, that is to say the urgency, and secondly the resources of the owner, handler, or trainer, including physical capabilities, financial abilities, and time, particularly if any of these impose a significant constraint. Imagine for a moment that we have a class of toddlers. In scenario 1, we have one toddler tries to stab the other toddler with a pair of scissors because that toddler was trying to get hold of the toy in their hand. In scenario 2, we have one toddler turns around and keeps the toy out of reach of another child, even though it was the other toddler's turn to play with the toy. In both these scenarios, we can say that the toddler with possession of the toy may need an intervention, but what these interventions might look like would be vastly different. Which scenario does this dog represent more closely?
I'm going to show you how to teach her to drop the ball every single time. So if I go to get it, she has this habit now. You already taught her to do this. So what I'm going to do here is, without changing any tools at all, just using my hand, see how she does not want to let go of the ball. She holds on to it.
The dog is not biting, snapping, or even growling at the owner or Dog Daddy when they attempt to take the ball from her. She is simply turning away. The dog presents no imminent risk to a person, another animal, or to itself when it doesn't want to give up the ball. This isn't even real resource guarding. It's just a dog that's bad at sharing. Let's go back to our toddler analogy for the moment. If I decide to smack the toddler who doesn't want to share, I can achieve compliance where the toddler will give up the toy, but I do risk that the toddler will not learn the value of reciprocal play. In that instance, particularly if I haven't even tried other methods, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. This is not the same thing as where I may need to use physical force to remove the pair of scissors from the toddler who is threatening his classmate. There, it is my duty to protect the classmate, and that outweighs mild to significant discomfort to the bully, even if that bully is behaving that way because another child took toys away from him the week prior.
This is not only going to work for the ball when she's playing, this is a really important training command for all types of leave it in any situation.
While Dog Daddy does try to justify the use of his techniques, citing the need for a dog to have a strong drop it, in the case a dog gets hold of a dangerous substance such as a poison, that only proves that there is a substantial need for the dog to perform a particular behavior, a threshold competency, if you will. Thus, I will grant Dog Daddy that learning to drop it is non-negotiable, and that management through avoidance is not a minimally acceptable outcome, regardless of what Zak George or AVSAP foolishly and recklessly believe. But is this need urgent? If, for argument's sake, the dog was going to work near dangerous chemicals, that would be one thing that might be an urgent need. But there's no known reason why this particular dog has to learn a solid drop it in a single lesson. LIMA stands for the least invasive method available. This means that in order to ethically contradict Dog Daddy, who does have the legitimate aim of teaching the dog a skill to avoid poisoning, I need to be able to present a realistic alternative that is likely to work within the given constraints. So something similar to this scenario actually happened when our pup was really young. While the method might potentially take more repetitions over a longer period of time for a teenage or adult dog, this method can still be realistically applied within the given constraints. A retrieval can be broken down into the following steps. 1. The dog needs to chase after the item and pick it up. 2. The dog needs to come. 3. The dog needs to give up the item. I noticed that while Puppy would let a family member take the ball from his mouth, he really disliked it. He was still learning the joys of fetch and of reciprocal play, so he interpreted the ball being snatched away from him as a punishment for successful retrieval, taking away his prize or reward for completing step 1. There was no discernible way for him to avoid the consequences of what he perceived as a punishment. So instead of potentially turning a problem with step 3, giving up the item, into a problem with step 2, where he could pick up the item but then refuse to come when called or run away, I asked the family member to please never take away the ball from him directly. That doesn't mean that the dog's behavior was okay, or that it would just be tolerated or ignored. It was and still is a non-negotiable for him to give up any item when commanded to do so, including pure ostrich meat or his favorite ball. I did not just accept that he might not be a fetch dog. I did not suspend his training until I could try, or try and fail to solve the issue. Instead, I taught the concepts in parallel rather than in sequence. I would give him an item that was a particularly valuable currency for him, and swap it out for an item that was a more valuable currency as the reward for giving it up. So, for example, in a distraction-free environment where he was willing to accept food, I might swap out his frisbee for a piece of a chewy. That way I could teach him to drop it. Note that I did not swap out for his most valuable currency, just a more valuable currency than what he had possession of at the time. If you are going to throw hot dogs to teach a dog to come, you are in for a bad time. Good luck. Then I would start throwing the item, marking and rewarding him with another throw for successfully dropping the object. That is why he never felt like he was being punished for a successful retrieval, and quickly learned that giving me access to the ball means he gets to have more fun. This helps to avoid a scenario where a dog will run to retrieve an item, but then will run away with it. Now, this isn't perfectly desirable behavior yet either. I would like a dog to give me the object in my hand. I don't want to constantly have to bend down to get it. My solution for this was to first teach him to put away his toys in the toy box, which requires a strong pick it up first. I would then use the pick it up to get him to hand me the ball or another object after retrieving it.
As you can see in the beginning of this video, she is still completely happy and comfortable with playing with the ball. The only difference now is that she drops it on command.
While Dog Daddy claims that his use of an aversive method, that is to say pinching, the dog did not affect the dog's desire to take part in a game of fetch. And while the body language did recover, presumably within a reasonable period of time after the aversive correction was applied, not only do I not believe that it was necessary in this particular case, it is also not pragmatic. It could potentially affect the dog's willingness to learn other tasks, such as placing the object in the handler's hand, but more importantly, someone who tried to replicate his technique on a dog with actual resource guarding issues could easily get bit. You could also make the dog reactive to touch, which it now more closely associates with pain than a game of fetch. And there is a chance that the dog might snap at a person, possibly a child, who tries to touch him on his flank. Again, if the physical or emotional well-being of others made that an acceptable risk, that is one thing. But here it was just plain irresponsible and not something I have ever seen a balance trainer actually do. In closing, I will point you to this video of Joel Beckman, where whatever you, Zak George, or I might otherwise think of his method, does not grab for a prong collar to protect the slight, elderly lady who could easily be hurt by her over-exuberant teenage dog, but instead teaches her to just keep walking, raising her leg, and then advises exercise in the form of play with other dogs, because her physical abilities compared to the exercise need of a dog cannot possibly tire out her dog enough to keep the dog under threshold and the behavior manageable.
It's just mom in this house, okay? Her husband died. She got the dog. She loves the dog. I'm watching this going, okay, what is going to help this lady and this dog the most in this 1 hour session? Is sit going to help this dog? Is lighting the dog up as a prong collar going to help this dog the most? No. How about more walks? Oh, lady, just walk your dog 5 miles twice a day. That's what she's going to have to do to get this energy out. Would running with this dog work? Yeah, I don't know if this lady's going to run far enough. Go ahead.
She got, hey.
Okay, that's the moment that I want you to speed up. You knew. There you go. We're not hurting him. You just don't launch yourself into the lady, and the lady won't.
I'm an older person, and I realize that's where I want to get him to a point where because
here it is again. It's just a bull rush. All he is doing is saying, "I'm stronger than you. I can move you." Okay, now we're going to get into all this, but I want to get into happiness for him. There's going to be a jump, and then you are going to grab with 2 hands on the collar. Does he usually wear a collar?
Yeah.
Okay, and then I would say you walk into him, and he feels the strength in your arm, and you walk him backward. 3 times a week, this dog needs to be wrestling hardcore with other dogs. And it's not just the thing that's the best to do for him. It's the easiest thing to do for him. All the other things require constant treats and constant training and constant walking and all.